Hello everyone. Welcome to English Podcast Library. I hope you're doing well. By listening to this podcast, I hope you can improve your English listening, speaking, and build your English vocabularies through listening to my podcast. Asterisk for English videos lesson. Please share, like, subscribe to my channel English Podcast Library. Asterisk now. Please listen to Mr. Andy Anderson history, what he's talking about. Immerse yourself in English.
Mr. Andy Anderson's Linguistic Odyssey, a cartographer's quest. Mr. Andy Anderson was a man of meticulous lines and precise measurements. His world was one of coordinates and contes, of topographical maps where every elevation and depression was rendered with exquisite accuracy. As a senior cartographer for a renowned geographical institute, his professional life was an intricate tapestry woven with technical specifications and the silent artistry of terrain representation. He could decipher ancient scripts on faded parchments, navigate by the faintest stellar alignment, and predict hydrological patterns with uncanny foresight. Yet, there remained one frontier that felt more daunting than any uncharted wilderness, the vibrant, often chaotic, landscape of spoken English. And he understood English conceptually. He devoured scientific journals written in impeccable prose, flawlessly translated historical documents, and even enjoyed classic literature penned by Dickens and Austen. His reading comprehension was, in a word, formidable. However, when confronted with the swift currents of a native speaker's conversation, the nuanced eddies of idiom, or the unexpected rapids of regional accents, his mind, usually a well-oiled machine of analytical thought, would falter, like a compass spinning wildly in a magnetic storm. His listening skills, he ruefully admitted, were a perpetual Achilles' heel. His vocabulary, though extensive in its written form, often felt clumsy and inaccessible in spontaneous verbal exchange, like a vast library whose books were shelved in an unfamiliar order. The bird and the cartographer. Days later, the expedition paused at a cliff overlooking the crystalline lagoon, where the same species of cormorant, the luminous, danced over the waves at dusk. The group positioned their equipment. Andy set up his surveying gear, while Bjorn held binoculars and Dr. Silver collected plant samples. Dr. Silver leaned close, in a quiet tone. "Do you remember your owl story from the other evening?" He nodded. She smiled. "There's a lesson here, in this bird." Andy watched as the cormorants dipped and glided. Their black feathers shimmered in the fading light. Like the owl guiding the lost, these birds led each other, returning nightly to the cliff. Dr. Silver continued, "In ecology, we call this communal navigation. They guide one another home. Just like your story, only here, it is nature itself that sings a direction." Andy considered her words. So, even in silence, in movement, there's language. Camilla grinned. "Precisely." A wave of recognition washed over him. Beyond spoken language, even the subtle cues, posture, flight patterns, conveyed meaning. His cartographic maps, too, relied on interpreting terrain, edges, slope, all silent. Words were not so different. The ethical not. Another week passed. As they explored a remote ravine, Masumi discovered a crack in the limestone wall, revealing formation layers dating back over a million years. The team converged. Collecting samples would be extraordinary. It could reshape the geological narrative of the region. But then came the unexpected. They heard voices, soft, resonant chants. Moving closer, they came upon a small enclave of islanders, undisclosed by satellite maps, whom they called the Kealenu people. They wore woven garments, spoke in a melodic native tongue, and sang in unison to the walls of the ravine. It was both a ritual and a prayer. The expedition halted. Questions flooded Andy's mind. Should they interrupt? Should they observe? Should they collect? The expedition's code mandated respect. But policy alone did not define respect. Professor Petrova issued a calm directive. Observe at distance. No sampling until we understand context. Andy was tapped by Bjorn to be the official liaison. Somehow, he who once feared each word was now entrusted to speak. He found himself walking slowly toward the small group, heart pounding. In English, softly, "Hello, I am Andrew Anderson, from the scientific expedition. May we watch?" The singers paused. An older man approached, a face etched with time and kindness. He spoke, not in English, but translated by one of the younger islanders in halting English. He said, "Our song, for the mountain mother, sacred, we welcome watchers, but take nothing." Andy, swallowing relief, translated back to his team, "They welcome us to observe, but not to sample." Professor Petrova responded with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Underson. We will proceed accordingly." Andy watched, awed by the ritual, the voices merging with limestone echoes. In that moment, communication transcended vocabulary. He realized language was less a set of rules, and more an opening, a bridge. Mapping new trust. Over the next 3 days, the expedition collaborated with the Kealenu people, guided through secret trails and caves full of painted glyphs. Andy cataloged each glyph, sketched them precisely, and gradually built a rapport with island elders. He listened to their stories, translated by a young islander learning English in the expedition school, about the land, the tides, the birds. His English had grown confident, but now he realized it was empathy that forged connection. He would say, "Your stories help us understand the land." Islanders responded, "Our land is in our story." By collaboration's end, Andy produced not just a topographic map, but a cultural ecological portrait of the ravine, annotated with islander names, voices, and lore. What began as a colonial impulse to measure had evolved into something humbler, richer. 6. A cartographer's baptism. The final day on Kalen Atoll loomed. The expedition was to hold an open ceremony on the beach, scientific posters, charts, and field equipment arranged for island leaders and scientists to inspect. Andy had been asked to present an integrated map, his magnum opus, now infused with cultural layers. A gentle breeze stirred. Islanders in woven cloaks and scientists in field jackets mingled. Dr. Petrova introduced Andy, Mr. Underson, our cartographer, a master of contour and narrative alike. Andy stepped forward. His pulse raced, but his voice was steady. "Welcome, my friends, from across the sea and from these sacred isles. What you see here is more than lines and symbols. It is a story of land, sea, sky, and people. Each stream, valley, song, and whisper has been recorded, not as silent specks of data, but as voices in our map." He paused and looked at the Kalanu elder standing near the lectern. The man nodded, inviting him to continue. Andy unfolded the large chart. Limb to limb, he traced a finger along a river, then along the painted glyphs. "Hey," he explained, "is where your first waterfall meets the salt marsh. Your songs told us a name, Killineu, the place of emergence." There was stillness, then applause, softly at first, then louder. The elder placed a hand on Andy's shoulder and, in English, said, "You heard us." Andy's emotion welled. His eyes glistened. "I learned from you," he whispered. It was no small feat for a man who once saw English as an impossible terrain. Now, he had built bridges crossing continents, cultures, and languages, aftermath and echoes. Back in the Scottish Highlands Training Centre, after the mission concluded, the team reunited to debrief. They shared data, laughter, wounds, and hopes. Andy felt among equals. He no longer hovered behind a screen of self-doubt. Bjorn clapped him on the back. "You map more than geography. Andy, you map trust." Dr. Silver nodded. "You gave voice to the land, and to us." Professor Petrova offered her final verdict. "Mr. Underson, your expedition map will be published as a definitive atlas of Kalen Atoll, credited to our consortium. Equally, your journey, your linguistic transformation, has become a beacon for every future expedition. A reminder that true navigation requires both compass and conversation. 8. Epilogue, New Horizons. A year later, the Kalen Atoll Environmental Survey Report was published, a monumental volume of geology, ecology, anthropology, and linguistics. In the introduction, Professor Petrova wrote, "This atlas integrates not only the physical contours of Kalen Atoll, but the voices and stewardship of its people. It stands as testament to our capacity not only to explore, but to listen. Mr. Andrew Underson's cartographic leadership was essential in forging not only the maps we made, but the human connections that enriched them." Andy returned home, maps rolled under his arm, heart full. He was invited to speak at international conferences on cartography, yes, but also on intercultural communication. He delivered speeches in fluent English, no longer frantic in his mind, but thoughtful, clear, warm. The midnight compass. The expanse of jungle at dusk was oppressive, heavy with humidity and the hum of unseen crowds, frogs, insects, distant bird calls. Lights from headlamps bounced across emerald leaves, illuminating insects that glittered like jewels. Andy, Bjorn, and Camilla had been assigned a waypoint survey deep within the forest, a labyrinthine route marked for eventual trailblazing. They paused at an ancient tree, its canopy forming a cathedral of green. Camilla started sketching notes. Bjorn stared at the compass. Andy stared at the needle, its magnetic whisper. But then Camilla spoke, a statement, not a question. We're off by 2 degrees. Andy stared at Bjorn. His accent soft, Bjorn clarified. Needle drift? Or your magnetic anomaly interpretation? Camilla nodded. My calculations, based on declination, don't align with the instrument reading. Andy felt his brain shift gears. This is vocabulary, technical, precise. Heart locked in analytical focus. He inhaled, then spoke. Let me double-check from declination table. Local variation here is 1.2 degrees west. Compass reads 359. So that lands our magnetic north at 357. If our true bearing to waypoint is 002, we are indeed off by 5 degrees. He watched Camilla's face light with recognition, and Bjorn's slow nod. Excellent, Bjorn said. Thank you, Andy. That saves our waypoint. It was a subtle moment but powerful. His technical phrasing, declination table, magnetic variation, bearing and waypoint, flowed from his mouth fluidly, with just enough clarity, authority, and confidence to shift the task forward. The words once slippery, now strong bridges. The shared meal, the shared laugh. Back at camp, at mealtime, the mood was relaxed. Dishes from various cultures were passed around. Brazilian cassava cakes, Mongolian fermented dairy morsels, Japanese seaweed salad. Conversation swelled in accents, laughter, half-translations. Andy reached for a steamed cassava cake and looked at Dr. Oyumbata, the Mongolian geochemist, who offered it with a smile. Andy bit into it, the savory sweet texture surprising. Try fermented mare's milk, Oyumbata offered, holding up a small vial. A ritual drink. Andy hesitated, glanced at Bjorn, who gave an encouraging grin. He steeled himself, raised a vial, and said, to teamwork and new flavors, completing the toast in clear English. He drank, his face puckered, not unpleasantly, but expressive enough. Oyumbata laughed gently. Andy laughed, too, and added, it's invigorating. He pronounced the word slowly in a playful tone that drew a ripple of laughter, not ridicule. He had delivered both vocabulary and tone. Invigorating. He owned the word before the others could, and his slight tremble at the end only made it more genuine. Language wasn't only precision. It could be shared joy, humor, cultural exchange. He felt connected, not just competent. The cross-language rescue. One afternoon, during a remote tidal survey along a low reef shelf, a sudden swell caught Masumi off guard. Her surveying tripod toppled into a rock pool. Gear clattered and cables sank. She shouted in English, but panic's word order scrambled. Tripod, stop. It's gone. Andy and Bjorn raced forward. Bjorn knelt and peered into the water. The device was held fixed just under the lip of a coral ledge. Tentatively, Masumi tried again. I can't get it back. Andy looked at Bjorn, then addressed Masumi. Stand back. We'll retrieve. Please stay on dry rock. He hooked a long pole with a rubber grip under the tripod base, then wiggled gently. The gear popped free. Andy lifted it carefully. He handed it back to Masumi, connecting all cables again. She looked at him, her voice steady now. You saved it. Andy, thank you. He responded, slower than usual, but with earnest pride. We saved your work. Good teamwork. In that moment, he recognized the power of calm, clear instruction, even rescue, in English. Words are not just communication. They are reassurance and safety. The Storm's Orchestra. Late one night, an electrifying storm converged over the HQ tent camp. Sheets of rain slammed the canvas. Wind laid waste the torp flaps, and colleagues scrambled to anchor equipment. Professor Petrova's command came at a shout, barely audible under thunder. All hands. Secure the northern quadrant, buckets and cables. In the chaos, Andy hesitated, momentarily frozen by noise. Then he remembered active listening, context, body language, single-word anchors. He moved purposefully toward the cluster outside Tent 3. He yelled over the roar, "Hold this rope! Not at 8! Watch the line tension. Don't let it snap." He used movement and demonstration. 2 teammates, one from Germany, one from Brazil, mirrored him, and they secured the quadrant. They repeated his commands. "Hold not! 8! Line tension." It became a rhythm. Later, sheltered under a tarp with quivering smiles, Dr. Silver said, "Your voice, solid like lighthouse in storm." He bowed his head, wet hair plastered to his temple. Words were once uncertain. Now they guided, grounded, anchored. The ceremony of voices. On the final night, under a sky inked with stars, the team gathered around a bonfire on the central beach. The ocean hummed in the distance, and someone played soft chords on a battered guitar brought from Germany. Food was passed, laughter echoed, and mugs of spiced cocoa warmed their hands. Professor Petrova stood, her boots still dusty from a final climb that afternoon. She raised her mug. "To each of you," she said, "for your contribution to this extraordinary journey, your science, your sweat, your brilliance. But tonight, I want to recognize someone whose journey was not just physical or scientific, but profoundly human." All eyes turned. "Mr. Andrew Anderson," she said, "cartographer, linguist, yes, I said linguist, listener, leader." Andy, blinking, slowly rose. He didn't speak immediately. The group quieted, sensing something significant. "I came here thinking I knew how to read landscapes," Andy began. His voice was steady, warm, and clear. "But this journey taught me to read people. To listen not just with ears, but with patience. To speak not just with words, but with understanding." He looked out at them, his peers, now friends. "I used to believe that maps were my only language, but you showed me otherwise. Every shared joke, every question I dared to ask, every misheard instruction that turned into a moment of learning, you gave me the courage to be uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, I found fluency. Not perfection, but connection." There was a moment of stillness. Then Bjorn stood and clapped. Others followed. A rising, unpretentious ovation, not for spectacle, but for the journey they had all witnessed. A letter home. Weeks later, back in his modest flat in London, Andy sat at his desk. Outside, the Thames shimmered in the winter sun. On his desk sat the framed team photo from Kalen Atoll, mud-streaked faces, wind-whipped hair, grins wide and real. He picked up a pen. To the new cohort of expeditioners. Subject, a letter from an old mapmaker. "Dear explorers, you're about to embark on the Kalen Atoll expedition. I could give you advice on terrain, weather, or logistical pitfalls, but there are better experts for that. I want to talk about something else, the language, not just English, not just pronunciation or idioms. I mean the language of listening, of asking for clarification, of laughing when you make a mistake, of staying in the conversation even when it feels like swimming upstream. I was terrified of English, not the reading kind, but the speaking kind. Terrified I'd never belong. But I learned this. Fluency is not perfection. It's presence. It's showing up again and again, word by word, sentence by sentence, until fear is replaced with rhythm. So speak. Speak often. Speak badly at first, but speak anyway. And listen, not just to words, but to people. That's where the real map is. Yours in exploration. Coda, the language within. On a rainy afternoon, Andy walked through a gallery in London's Natural History Museum. One corner displayed the first full topographical map of Kalen Atoll, his work etched in glass and framed in oak. Below it, a small plaque read, Mapped by Andrew Underson, cartographer and communicator. He looked at the curve of the coastline he had traced by hand, remembered the day they climbed that ridge, remembered Masumi's shout, Camilla's laugh, Bjorn's voice, steady, clear, encouraging. He turned away and murmured aloud, to no one in particular, still learning, still listening. And in that quiet, confident voice was everything he had become.